Nearly a year ago I gave birth to my first child. He's so perfect and lovely, and literally the light of my life and my purpose for living. But that's not why I'm here. Before giving birth, basically my whole pregnancy, I appreciated how kind and attentive everyone was towards me, especially my Mill who constantly bought things for the baby. I had the best pregnancy too. And my Mill would actually ask how I was. She'd make me snacks like chocolate-covered strawberries and charcuterie boards. Her behavior towards me was really new. I wasn't used to this sort of attention and consideration. But I'll get into that in a bit here. Even though she was super kind and thoughtful, I couldn't shake the feeling that she did it more for herself than for me. So in my head, I was sort of thinking that she had ulterior motives. But other than that, I had no complaints about her actions during that time. I was trying to soak it all in while I could. She was refurbishing this antique crib and matching change table for my husband and I. It seemed like the two of us had turned over a new leaf. But there was always something in the back of my mind that had my guard up with her. She had burned me so many times in the past and didn't treat me well in the early years that my husband and I were dating. Now, a little backstory. So when my husband, her son, and I started dating, we started dating in our last year of high school. It's been 12 years since. When we started dating, it was super obvious that she wasn't all impressed with her son dating me. She was repulsed by me. I should mention too that I'm an obvious minority. I'm of a different culture than my husband, and there were little comments that she'd make about the color of my skin and my family name. I felt like an outsider in my own husband's family at the time, constantly walking on eggshells around his mother. She wouldn't greet me when I came into the home. When she cooked dinner and I was over, she'd bring out just enough dishes and cutlery for her, my Phil, my husband, and his sister. But she'd never have anything out for me. So I'd have to go into the cupboard and get it myself. I once had brought over a bunch of clothes and purses that I no longer wore or used. I put them in a black garbage bag. And my Sil, at the time she was 3 years younger, and I were going through the bag so that she could pick out what she wanted before I donated them. Well, we were doing this in the living room, and Mill comes home and walks into the back door from the garage. She sees us going through this black bag. She's like, "Why are you doing through the trash?" And she directed the question to my Sil. And my Sil is just like, "Oh, Op, brought them over so I can go through them before she gets rid of them." And then Mill snaps at her and she's like, "I don't want you going through that old shit." She literally rips the bag out from our hands and takes it, and I'm like sitting there in shock, and she takes it outside the back and I watch her throw the bag over the fence to where the garbage is. And my Sil is just looking at me and she's like, "I'm sorry." And I'm like, "Hey, you don't have to apologize to her." Then my Mill came back in and told my Sil to go upstairs, and then I was just left there sitting in the living room alone until my husband got home from hockey practice. Then my Mill wasn't going to let us go to graduation together. My husband literally told me that she said to him that she didn't want him looking back at pictures of me and him together at grad when there were prettier girls to go with. Yeah. That happened. When my husband had a fit and sort of told her where to go, she told him that she'd stop paying for his hockey equipment if we went together. Then my Phil at the time said that was nonsense and said that the money wasn't hers to spend. So that was hilarious. And then when we went to go and find him a suit, his mom didn't want me going with him either. She tried to tell him that he had to maintain a certain grade in order to stay together with me. And then she'd say that they weren't going to pay for the limo for either of our grads. We went to different high schools, so there was going to be 2 separate grads, mine and his. After we graduated, my husband went away to play hockey during the winter. The only times that I could really go and see him were either when he had away games, so like he's visiting from whatever city was his home team, or if I drove to whatever city he was stationed. This was rare cause I was going to university at the time and didn't have a lot of cash for gas. At the away games, I'd be greeting and hugging my husband and she'd straight up not acknowledge my presence and talk to him as if I wasn't there. She'd mentioned that she met a really beautiful girl at work who was interested in dating me, so she gave her his number. And my husband would be like, "What the heck is wrong with you? I'm dating Op. I love Op." She did this at almost every away game. In the early years, I was the thinnest I'd ever been because of an eating disorder I suffered from at the time. But his mom still made comments about my butt and hips. But those things on my body just don't go away. She'd talk to my Sil about how she thought I was so fat and ugly and she didn't know how her son was with me. And then of course my Sil would tell me this. She would ask her Sil if she had any friends that could date my husband. Okay, so jump to once I gave birth, my in-laws came to the hospital right away. Like I'm talking right away. I ended up having to get an emergency CC, and when I was being wheeled into my hospital room after the surgery, I saw my in-laws at the nurse's desk asking if I was out yet. So then they try to get into the room, but the nurses are like, "Oh, you can't be in here until we're done just checking Op out a bit." So they wait outside the room. I'm already thinking that's a bit weird. So then while they're doing whatever it is to me, they take our son out to also get checked out, and I think it was some sort of K-shot. Then as they bring our son back into our room, my in-laws follow. I haven't even had a chance to really hold my son yet, other than a bit of trying to get him to latch right away. Then the nurses leave and they go in to pick up our son. My husband is sort of too tired to say anything at the time, And I'm still kind of in shock from having to go into surgery. They didn't bother to ask how I was doing. They were holding and smiling at our son. They actually ignored the fact that I was even there. They asked questions to my husband. They asked how the labor went and how the surgery went without even directing any question to me. I felt so tired and I was in pain, but I just smiled through it and accepted that these are my husband's parents. And a part of me was like, oh, maybe they just don't want to bother me. But then they came back to the hospital every day we were there. They made it seem like they were caring too, because they asked me husband if we wanted anything and all I craved was a McDonald's breakfast sandwich and an iced coffee. So my husband told them what I wanted. So they were like, cool. On our way. Then when they get to the hospital, turns out they went to go pick up some weird Chinese food buffet stuff. I'm like, great. Thanks. So grateful that they brought us some food, but dang. Like when you have a craving for your first meal after giving birth, it's all you think about for days until you get it. And every day we were there, they hogged our son and held him in again. Didn't ask me anything or acknowledge me. After being discharged from the hospital, my in-laws continued to visit our house. I wasn't feeling well enough for visitors, but my husband didn't tell them not to come over. So, I had no choice but to stay up late and try to entertain them while still recovering from major surgery a few days ago. As time went on, I began to resent their constant presence, but I never spoke up about it. And like usually people would offer to like bring over snacks or maybe help clean the house or anything while the new parents settle in. But nope. Nothing. All she wanted to do was hold our son. My husband ended up getting called into work. So then I felt anxious and started getting up, even though I was in serious pain, and cleaning up and making food while my in-laws sat on the couch and cooed at my beautiful baby boy. Then I'm on social media later and I see that they posted an announcement of their first grandson and tagged my husband but didn't tag me. And then they gave him the wrong name. I legally hyphenated my son's name, so it's both mine and my husband's last name. But they only included my husband's last name. Fast forward 2 weeks and they basically forced my husband and I to go out for wings with them at this pub, which we instantly regretted. It was a month after giving birth when we visited my in-laws' place, and I had hoped they would have prepared a special meal or some balloons as a surprise. But to my disappointment, there was nothing of the sort. Maybe it was the hormones, but I couldn't help feeling upset. To make matters worse, my in-laws were smokers and they didn't wash or anything before holding baby, and then that's when I was like, hey guys, could you not smoke when you know that baby is going to be over? And I didn't even get a response. And then my husband reiterates it. And she goes, yeah, but it's not going to kill him. And then I go to open my mouth and then my husband goes, just don't, or else we don't have to come over. And she goes, okay, got it. We were visiting them every other day, and it felt like my husband cared more about making them happy than respecting my wishes. Every time we went over, they would take the baby away from me, which was overwhelming and frustrating. And it made me feel really awkward. Not only that, but they'd just show up to our place at 8 p.m. to see our son. But we'd be trying to do quiet time and put him to bed. Then they'd just get him riled up or we'd wait too long and he'd get a second wind and he wouldn't be sleeping until 10 p.m. I'm like, hey, sorry guys, can you not come by past 7 p.m.? We're trying to set a sleep schedule for our son. And she'd say, we didn't do anything like that while my husband was a baby. And I say, well, it's different times and this is what we're choosing to do, so we'd appreciate it. And she just scoffs. So jump to now and I just recently started going back to work a couple of days a week. My mill insisted I bring baby over to their place, instead of her coming to our place, and I could work in their office. So sure, I do it. The office is actually a nice setup so I'm getting a lot done. I'm really grateful for their help and support. Then one time, she's having a hard time putting baby to sleep. I'm like, maybe he's just teething. Then I go to make a tea and realize that she hasn't fed him his lunchtime bottle and it's already so far from the time that he's supposed to get it. I go upstairs with this bottle and I'm like, hey, Mill, he's probably hungry. If you want to give him this bottle he'll likely go right to sleep. Then she shoots me this evil look and she's like, back off. I know what I'm doing. Then I'm like, Kay, maybe don't talk to me that way, I know my own son. Now you're just starving him and he's not going to go to sleep without a full belly. And she gets up from bed with him in her arms and she slams the door in my face and I hear the door lock. I'm like, there is no way that she literally just did this. My son is screaming his head off and I feel this rage come upon me, but I'm trying to stay cool. So I start knocking on the door and I'm like, hey, Mill, don't want to step on your toes but I can get him to sleep if you want to open up. She straight up tells me to bugger off. Then I'm like, nope. So I start knocking even harder and I'm like, open up the door please. She ignores me. Then even harder, I'm like, please open the door. She continues to ignore me. I do this a few more times until I'm basically banging on the door and trying to use my body to get in. All while my son is screaming his lungs off and literally choking now and coughing because he's crying so hard. So then I'm like, if you don't open up the door, I'm calling the police. Nothing. So I dial 911. And then the police ended up coming and telling her to give me back my baby and they really didn't do much other than say that she can be put under investigation for harming a child. And they asked me if I wanted to press charges and I said no. But now I'm here. I told my husband what happened and he's actually furious. So do I press charges? What do I do? Am I blowing this out of proportion? Is this just some sort of PP rage? Help. Update. Okay, so my husband actually took this really seriously and he's just as fed up as I am. I cannot believe I've even let it go this far. After we got back home and he saw the state of our boy, my husband had called his parents and reamed them out and told them that they'll never have anything to do with our son again. We went complete NC with them right away. My husband didn't want anything like this happening again to our baby. He didn't want to take that chance. He said it's not just about the two of us anymore, it's about protecting our son. And he's so right. Our poor baby cried so much that he broke blood vessels in his eyes and now half of his face is all swollen and I feel like such a failure for not kicking down that door. We were actually investigated by social services too, which was great. Not. I also went back to the police department and talked to the officer who came by and said I wanted to press charges for child endangerment. They had to take pictures of my poor boy for evidence and they took statements from my husband and I called my husband today, multiple times, and wouldn't you know it, the voicemails all said Mill finally got arrested, after he finished calling us every name in the book. Not my problem anymore. That wretched woman's finally getting what she deserves. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Found out my wife's affair with her best friend's husband in a hotel room. We caught them red-handed, recorded the evidence, and exposed their infidelity online. My wife and I were still very young in love when I discovered she was letting someone else tap her honeypot. My wife and I met in our hometown, and shortly after, I returned from college to settle down there. I loved her from first sight, and after several dates together, we started dating and married after dating for a year and 3 months. Meeting and marrying May was like a dream come true for me. She was the kind of girl I always wanted to settle with. She was hardworking, beautiful, intelligent, and fun to be with. There was never a dull moment with her, and I looked forward to waking up next to her every day. May was also a passionate lover, she loved me with everything in her, and while our marriage lasted, we barely fought or did anything to hurt each other. We lived in peace and harmony and treated each other respectfully. I was and still am a good man and ensured that I cared for May and provided her needs. May worked as a receptionist at a big fancy female store, and our earnings were enough to keep the house running. We never had any financial issues because we tried our best to live within our means, and throughout the 2 years we were married, we supported each other and pushed ourselves to find better jobs. With May, I felt fulfilled and looked forward to spending the rest of my life with her. She was a child at heart and had her way of adding colors to any place she went to. People loved May, and she was really popular amongst her friends. We lived in a small town, so there was hardly a place May and I went to that she wasn't recognized. Mainly because her father held a leadership position while she was in high school. Aside from being a great wife, May was also a great friend, and she had 2 best friends she often used to hang out with. Most times, they would decide to go on a weekend vacation or have their regular girls' night, and I never tried to stop her because I understood that it was normal for her to want to hang out with her friends even when we were married. I also became friends with her best friends' husbands, so whenever May and her best friends went on vacation, the 3 of us would hang out together and spend time together. We did this for 2 years. May and I were married, and even when we would all hang out as a family unit, I never suspected that May was cheating on me with one of her best friends' husbands. Although I noticed she was close to one of them, I didn't think there was any extra. I thought he was the one she related with the most, and I kept believing this until I discovered a dark truth. One evening, May told me she was stepping out to hang out with the girls as usual, and I watched her as she prepared, wore a new dress she had recently bought, and did her makeup. She was always like that, and I didn't see anything off. I even gave her some cash in case she needed to buy anything for herself and her girlfriends. About an hour after she left, I was searching for my golden watch in our jewelry drawer when I found May's ring. I wasn't comfortable that she left her ring behind, and it was very unlike her to do so. So, I tried to call her, and after calling her several times and she didn't pick up her call, I resorted to calling one of her best friends. On the first call, her best friend took the call, and when I asked her if I could speak with my wife, she told me May wasn't with her, and she said they weren't hanging out that night either. While I was trying to wrap my head around the fact that May lied to me and left her wedding ring at home, her best friend asked if her husband was with me. He wasn't, and I was surprised that she asked. She was shocked when I told her I had not seen her husband since the last time we all hung out. She said her husband told her he was going out with me for a drink that night, and it was weird that he wasn't with me. At this point, we realized that something was off, and we concluded that there was a possibility my wife and her husband were together since they coincidentally lied to us on the same night. To find her husband, she tried to check her husband's Snapchat location, but it was turned off, and when I checked May's Snapchat location, it was on, and we both decided to go down there. My heart nearly fell in my stomach when I realized that May's location was a hotel, and after asking a couple of questions, we found the hotel room May lodged in. Meanwhile, we started documenting my process of going to May's hotel room. And when I knocked on the door of the room she lodged in, and she opened it, she was beyond shocked to see me and her best friend there. She was naked underneath the bathrobe she was wearing, and her best friend's husband was lying in bed, expecting that she would attend to whoever knocked on the door and return to him. Immediately we got into the room, I started yelling at her while recording her, and she was so embarrassed. Her best friend was so upset that she hit her husband and attacked May for being a betrayer and homewrecker. May was so ashamed that she could not look me in the eye. She did not even try to explain. She only stood in one position with tears running down her cheeks. After I had recorded enough, I left with her best friend and warned her not to set her feet at home. She didn't come home that night. She probably slept in the hotel room with her app. That night, she didn't only lose her marriage. She lost her friend of so many years too. Her best friend and I decided to post the video online without covering their faces to humiliate her more. We combined the video and the Snapchat location and kept posting them online until many people started sharing them. It was so humiliating for her, especially since most people in our hometown knew her, and her best friend had been friends since high school. It was my first time being so heartbroken, and I was not myself for weeks. Days after I caught her with her best friend's husband, she tried to beg me and promised it would never happen again, but everything she said fell on deaf ears. We divorced because I could not stand the shame of being associated with her infidelity. Likewise, her best friend divorced her husband and got custody of their 2 kids. Meanwhile, after the video went viral, my wife could not go out because of the looks she got from people. She couldn't even attend her high school reunion because everyone had seen the video. On my end, I had to move to a different location to start life all over again. Whenever I remember how my wife played on my intelligence and betrayed her friend of more than 15 years, it still surprises me. She didn't value our marriage or her relationship with her friend, and anyone who can do such a thing can do even more terrible things. I know I will not get into another relationship anytime soon because my heart still breaks when I remember how much I loved my wife and how she ruined everything we had.